Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my podcast, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well as sharing your comment in the comments section. It goes a long way to help us reach more souls and get on the YouTube algorithm. For those of you who have been here before, thank you so much for joining us. Let's climb together. Today's guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is none other than Catherine Duncan. Catherine is a renowned best-selling author. She's a fellow near-death experiencer. She's an integrative spiritual consultant, and she also works as a chaplain. And she deals a lot in palliative care settings, and she has a great deal of personal and professional experience that really speaks to death and dying and the eternity of the soul. She's also a wonderful podcast host, which I will also be a guest on shortly as well. So, without further ado, we bring on the healer extraordinaire, Catherine Duncan, on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Catherine Duncan, thank you so much for being here as my guest on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. So good to have you.
Thank you, Jacob. So great to meet you.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how our paths met. I'm sure we can understand, why particularly, or maybe the strings that were pulling it together. But I was very touched and impressed with seeing you, on social media and hearing about your book and seeing a lot of the parallels. But for, viewers who may be living under a rock because you're making such an impact on consciousness in the world today, for quite some time, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because your story is just so profound in so many different angles, and you're making such a mark, in so many different facets today. But just to maybe let us in on a little bit about Catherine Duncan.
Thank you, Jacob. And I think we met through our mutual friend, Kimberly Meredith, out in
Yeah,
California. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I'd start with my path really started when I was 10 years old, 10 turning 11. I came very close to dying as a child, and my whole world cracked open at 11 years old. I'm a 50-year childhood cancer survivor at 11, 10, actually 10 turning 11. I was diagnosed with a really rare childhood cancer. My parents were told I had a 20% chance to live, and I didn't know that. I never heard the word. I thought I would go to the hospital and have to take a Tylenol. I was so little, but through really intensive treatments and no one talking to me about what was happening, because back in the 70s, they had no program for children. My parents, I felt their love, but they didn't see anything, and I quickly felt like I was between life and death. I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, and
Mm.
out of nowhere, started to pray, "Could I live to be 20?" And that's not long after this peace poured through my body and a knowing I wasn't alone, and it happened at a young age.
Wow. So this is around 10 or 11 where you experience this piece. Now, tell us a little bit about this piece. Was this like a light that you experienced, or just did it have a language to it? And, what did that really teach you about maybe what you were going through moving
Mhm.
forward?
Yeah, I was I was 11 and going through treatments, and I just out of nowhere I started praying. Faith meant nothing to me. We intermittently went to a Lutheran church, but because I felt like, "Oh, am I gonna live?" All of a sudden, I mean, I grew up so quickly at that age, and I just started praying and praying and praying and praying. I just wanted to live, and I have a memory one afternoon, this energy, this peaceful energy just
Mm,
poured through my body, so it was a feeling, and it was just like,
mm,
oh, almost taking my breath away, and it was just this knowing that I wasn't alone. I had a knowing I was gonna live,
mm,
and it was profound. I mean, I it's so interesting. I look back, and I didn't tell anyone, but it gave me so much comfort when I was in a period of I was so alone and so scared, and all of a sudden I felt like I had support, and the whole world just opened up to me and a sense of companionship.
mm. that must have been quite the contrasting energy from what you were experiencing, I'm sure, up until that moment where, I can't imagine what you're experiencing, at that age or at any age to be, to have cancer, to feel, that degree of illness. But what did maybe that teach you about, did that do you feel that light, perhaps healed your condition? Because I know I've read, like, Anita Moorjani, for instance. I'm sure some parallels. I'm sure her story is more midlife and stuff like that, but she was, they're about to pull the plug almost, and she experienced, this profound NDE, and she was able to heal a lot of what was going on from that light. Was that also a part of your journey too, where you feel this light perhaps healed, the condition?
I have no doubt that that is the biggest part of my healing. I feel like I wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for God, the divine. There's so many words, it's almost unnameable. This force, this energy that came through my being. I think I was given an exit point. I think we can be given exit points in our life. And I think that was one I was given. And I chose not to, and that feeling of this oneness with the divine, it's been with me to this moment. I mean, it's just so comforting with me every day.
Yeah. A little bit off track, I was watching, like, this Paul McCartney documentary last night, and he spoke about almost kind of like a close brush with death where he was, I think, in Hawaii, and there was, like, a big wave that he was in, and he didn't know he was gonna make it, and he said, "God, please allow me to survive this. I'll give everything I have moving forward if you allow me to survive." And, thank God he did, and he just, was able to do his thing with the Wings after the Beatles, and, he's still kicking and doing wonderful
Mm,
things. For you, is that kind of a little bit of part of it too, where you experienced this light and you had a degree of an agreement to perhaps look at life differently in your orientation, perhaps?
I would say absolutely yes. I got through all the treatments, and then as a teenager, it was so interesting. I look back and I started voraciously reading every book I could find on life and meaning and philosophy and theology and why are we alive? Because I wasn't ready yet to look at my past. It wasn't until my late 20s I actually finally did therapy work on that. So, but I do vividly remember to this day, I pray, like, guide me, show me the way, who I'm called to be on this earth. And
Mhm.
a funny story to share, I followed the business path because my father and I have a lot of siblings. Everyone was in corporate America. So I went into advertising. I had this incredible job with Time Magazine. I had the number one print job here in the Midwest, in Minneapolis, actually. And it was glamorous, and I was making all this money, but not, how many years into it, my heart was like, oh, I don't know if this is my
Mhm.
path. And um, yeah, there's a whole story there of having a near death experience, but we could get into, but I'll share that what came through when I finally stepped off that path was chaplaincy and theology. And so I was just like, really? To become a chaplain? I was like, are you kidding me?
Mm.
Oh.
This was a download of information that you got to do this work? Is that what I'm getting at, or
Yeah, after I had actually on a timing corporate trip, a near death experience whitewater rafting in Costa Rica in 2000. And that was a turning point where within a month I gave my notice, even though it's glamorous, all this, I gave my notice. I'm like, I'm done. And I thought I need to pray, I need to listen, I need to journal. Like, where am I really being called? And it was theology divinity school, which was fabulous, but then it was chaplaincy. It was like I kept listening, and to the extent where I did my residency program for chaplaincy at the hospital where I was a patient. I was like, "Wow."
wow.
How we're guided in life.
Yeah, interesting. It seems like you were climbing this corporate, material ladder, and you were getting to a
Mhm.
certain point where that wasn't satisfying, and it was, probably a burnout situation, I would assume, and just something that wasn't striking a chord. So you had this near-death experience, and this kind of showed you a different type of ladder where you're like, "No, it's really about the things that money can't buy and helping people evolve," and, stuff like that. So that's quite a profound insight. this, you've had a lot of different experiences throughout your life. Do you like sit back and say, why did I have all these things like, because, a lot of people have cancer and they don't actually knowingly have this experience. And a lot of people are in corporate America and they don't have maybe per se these shake-up calls, or if they do, maybe they're not listening to it. Have you ever sit back and said, "Why me? Why did I have all these kind of things?" Uh,
No, but I've had many people over the years say, "You should really write a book." And well, they'll say I ended up writing a book, but 10 years before I even started writing a book, I saw I was writing a book. I'm a mystic, I'm intuitive, so I saw a vision of it, but
mhm.
yeah, I would never be who I am today, ever, and do what I do had I not gone through all that, and I just feel so blessed and so grateful.
To have all these, yeah, because it I think people don't understand within these experiences, there's a lot of after effect gifts and changes. Did that start for you after 11 years old where you had this experience of light where you just I mean, I'm wondering for you before that, like, what was your orientation towards the light and intuition? Was that something that really exploded after this light, experience with the light at 11 years old?
Yeah, no, great question. Before 10, 11, I wasn't tuned into any of that. I had 5 older siblings, and I did have, an abusive childhood. I had an abusive father, and that was tough and rough, and honestly, I think that was part of, potentially, I look back now, like, why I was given an exit point because it was really a tough, in a way, tough childhood, but, it really started after going through, childhood cancer, that as a teenager, I mean, the books instead of going to parties as a high school kid, I was Friday night sitting home reading Existentialism and Human Emotions by Jean-Paul Sartre, or I was reading,
Oh, yeah.
Who is Man? Or I mean,
Hmm.
I love, self-help philosophy, theology type books, and I was starting reading so many as a teenager, and I was on this quest of, like, "Why are we here? What does it mean to be alive?" And that's been my passion.
Wow. Wow. A rewarding, but that must have been perhaps maybe a lonely road at a certain point, just being kind of different and tapped into other things. Did people around you, um, were they open to this stuff or did they ridicule it? Like, how did you grasp with some of the external perceptions about, this path that you were on?
I actually didn't talk about it with almost anyone except for I had one friend named Mari, and she was into this too. So we would get together on a Friday night and we'd read the same kind of books and we'd talk about it. So I did have a friend that was also into this.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I was so excited about reading these books. I'm like, oh, life is great. I'm just learning so much.
Yeah. I guess it's a different type of spirit on a Friday night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I
when
mean
but
yeah.
oh, sorry. When I started graduate theology school, I'll tell you the first class, History of Christian Theology with Doctor, his name is Ed Sellner. We were reading mystics and, Julian Norwich, Teresa of Avila, John of the Cross, Meister Eckhart, and we were reading a book a week, and when I started reading, I'm like, "These are my people. This is what I've been looking for since a teenager." I felt at
Wow.
home.
It's hard when you're just having these things, not really knowing what they are, and then other people around you are able to concretize these experiences and create universality, and you're like, "Wow, I'm no longer in an orphanage, I have a home, and there are other people like me." That must have been wonderful to experience that.
It's so exciting.
Yeah, yeah, it just almost reminded me when I picked up a book by Betty Adie that was gifted to me. I never heard of anyone else who had a near-death experience. That was my first book that I was given. I was like, "Oh my god." There's other people out there who have this. There's a term for it. I mean, on one hand, it made me feel a little less special and unique, but on the other hand, it allowed me to be a lot more empowered, and it seems like that was, the case, for yourself. Yeah, yeah, really cool. Um
Yeah.
a lot of people are, hitting the wall from a mental health standpoint, or even, with medical, conditions, and they're given diagnosis and they're given like this is going to be your life. And this is what it like, is there something that you learned from your personal life that can speak to maybe someone who does feel like they're given, perhaps a diagnosis that overtakes their sense of identity? And how do you feel people can navigate that? If
Mhm.
there's just this big diagnosis of cancer or heart disease or bipolar, I don't know, and there's a sense of identity diagnosis that could overtake your whole life.
Mhm. I think healing is mind, body, spirit, holistic healing. And it's so easy, excuse me, it's so easy to live head up where our mind runs us. And when life happens, and it happens to all of us, hardship, grief, illness, all those pieces. But I would invite people to tune in and just notice, are you living in your mind all day? Can you come into your body? Our bodies are in the present moment. Can you come down into your heart? When we're present in the moment, living from our heart, there's a spaciousness, there's breath, there's peace. What people are longing for, peace and some groundedness, is never found in our fast chattering ego mind. I know this is easy to say when there's a lot of hardship, but I am a big believer in the pathway to healing. It's feeling your feelings, it's letting feelings come through you and
Mm.
acknowledging it. But then where do you spend all day long? Are you in your mind, in a limbic loop, ruminating, worrying, fear, which is a low vibrational energy? Or can you take breaks and, like, be out in nature, like, right now, spring in Minneapolis, oh my gosh, snow's gone. You know, to just the geese are back and the loons and the birds, it's magical, and to come into the moment to feel that preciousness of life, and that's where life and healing and peace, that's where it is.
In the present moment.
Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah. Wow. Is that I mean, because I know you mentioned you work with people in, let's say, palliative care settings, and I know this was a very hard question that was posed to me, and I made a post in a couple years ago where someone close to me was about to cross over, and they just said, "Wow, you're this afterlife guy. Tell me one piece of advice, like, what's gonna happen to me?" For loved ones who are, having their loved ones about to cross over in the incubation state, what's maybe one thing that they should maybe say or do? Is there something that you found that's been helpful, to handle in their loved one's transition, from
Yeah.
this plane to the next?
Yeah, I spent 15 years as a chaplain at our level 1 trauma hospital and then a
Mhm,
hospice chaplain, so I've been with hundreds and hundreds of people at end of life and dying,
mhm,
and now I have a private practice, but I think a really core message I believe is we're not alone. We're never alone. So we're not alone in our journeys. Again, whatever you wanna call it, God, Allah, Brahma, source, energy. I mean, we're not alone, and we're all gonna die, and when the time comes, death is not an end. I was with so many people at the end of life dying that I'm a mystic, I see spirits, I people would come back and see me after they died, so my message is death is not an end also, and can that
mm.
give you peace?
Wow. It's amazing how beliefs could really shift our lives and our trajectories, and I think a lot of people get their beliefs from, almost like projections of fear or this reality, and it seems like the source where you got your own, I would say something that goes even further than a belief, like a knowing, came from a direct mystical experience, and as a result, you could have just held on to that experience, but you decided to give that over. Why?
After seeing so much as a chaplain, after walking with hundreds and I mean thousands of people in crisis, if it's they're dying from, a trauma, sudden, fall, a car crash, or they're in hospice, I, witnessed so much. I witnessed spirits in a room. I would witness when people died, their energy like coming out on the top of their head and then literally coming back and seeing me within a day or 2 in the middle of the night, and it's truth, it's reality, it's my lived experience, and so over time, I didn't tell many people, but now it's like, well, I've been asked more and more with the launch of my book and being on so many podcasts, and I'm like, this is my lived experience, and There's so much more. I think we're a spirit, soul, and a body for a short time, and there's
Mhm.
so much more beyond being in this body. And our body dies, but our spirit soul doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's fascinating, and I think the work that you do, for a lot of people would strike a lot of fear. I mean, they say one of the biggest fears that people have, is death, is transitions, and I'm wondering for you, like, how did you come to that work? Was that really based on your experience and, that you had at 11 years old that allowed you to just look at this thing in a much different lens than the, vast majority of the public?
I actually had one specific experience that was really soul shaping, pivotal in my life to go in this direction. I left Time magazine to study. I got a master's in theology and was a spiritual director. And I thought that's what I'd be, a spiritual director. And then my mother in law, she was 64 years old, diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. There was nothing they could do. My father in law asked me, could I please walk with her on this path? I did. She lived 1 year, but I watched her in front of my eyes transform. She went to some medical appointments. I took her to all the different healers, and she just surrendered into the flow of life. And it was beautiful to the extent that this moment I want to share. A couple days before she died, she was in hospice just for a week. She was walking around her house and she took myself and my husband, sat us down, and just looked in our eyes, inches from us, and said, I'm gonna teach you about death and dying, and I'm not afraid, and I'm ready. And I remember looking at her like, oh, like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then we had this hospice team and helping her. It was such a beautiful death. There was just this glow around her, this energy. The hospice workers seemed magical. And then I was like, chaplain. So that's where that came from. Um, yeah, she really started me on this path because when I was younger, I, of course, had heard of chaplains, this and that. I thought, never, I will never do that. I would never in my life. And then, haha, be careful what you pray for.
Wow, wow. It's life comes full circle, and it's, yeah, pretty wild ride sometimes, and I always say too, like, we are in many ways where where our dreams wanted us to be at a certain point in time, and they're unfolding. We don't recognize that, we're living our dreams, and you sometimes be careful what you wish for, as you say, right? But,
Yeah. And
uh
tell me, I want to ask about you because you had a near death experience. And how did you come to doing the work you're doing? I'd love to hear.
yeah, no, that's a really, wonderful question. A lot of angles, but I think really reading Betty's book gave myself a lot of universality behind it. Prior to that, it was kind of like a beach ball that I was really trying to put down for a long time because what do kids want to do is just to be normal and to fit in. You're not told to make a difference. You're just told to fall in line. But once I understood the functionality of the experience and the universality of it, it gave me more of a green light to do it. And there was a lot of other factors at play that just, as Suzanne Giesemann, my friend, would say, there was NOEs, no other explanations behind it. But I just got a lot of validation from spirit that this is, it was needed. And, it's kind of, I looked at it as a curse for a long time, but there was a certain point in time where I saw it as a gift, and that's that Picasso quote, right? "The meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of it is give it away." And once I recognized it as a gift, for myself, but more importantly for other people, was when I couldn't say no. Um, but
Beautiful.
I don't know about you, but I found as great as, a near-death experience that I've had and other types of transformative experience, there's nothing comparatively as expansive as giving over to other people, giving over to others. And I think really that's a functionality and to me, the God realization, the God embodiment of this journey is giving over to others. And once you recognize what you had was saying to give over to others and the impact that it could have on their trajectory of lives, how could you say no to that? So, but yeah, no, good question. It's the first time on my
Mm,
podcast I've been asked a question, but I do like it because we have so much in common. That yeah, it's just fascinating. I'm wondering too, like, and I had my NDE, as a 3-year-old in 1993. You had your experience, 11 years old, and then obviously in 2000, whitewater rafting situation. But what do maybe people get wrong about kids? Because a lot of times kids are just told, how to think, what to do, and they're not really listened to as much. Is there some type of belief system that's a little bit off from your own personal experience when it relates to kids?
There's I think now I have 2 grown children
Yeah.
and witnessed their growing through to who they've become. I just think kids carry such a wisdom. There's such a wisdom within
Mm,
children, and even just being around young children, they haven't their brains, prefrontal core, all that hasn't fully developed, so they embody such a sense of presence and magicalness of life. Many, many children teachers, so it is amazing though, based on life experiences that we all have, how they can really crack us open or not. I mean, so I'm sure people, and I've of course met a number of people who've gone through extreme hardship, and the result is they shut down, they close off. But
mm,
the other is opening and like, okay, what can I learn? Why am I here? And I think that starts with when we're young children. And going back to children, not mean to get off topic, but it's like what happens growing up, our family of origin and how we grow up dictates so much of how we relate to people as an adult, the whole attachment theory and all that, till we understand, this is who I am. This is what I didn't get, but here's what I want. I want to open and grow more. I want to learn to love. I want to learn to love more. All these are conscious choices we're making every single day.
mm. I love it. Literally. But yeah, I think sometimes, for instance, with kids, if you're going through a great deal of pain and parents aren't really there to process it, or the bandwidth or understanding of that isn't there, then kids have a very hard time learning how to emotionally regulate, and that could relate itself to, turning on other people, or, self-injurious behaviors or high acuity, type behaviors. I think what you're saying is wonderful, that, you were given something, but there's an innate wisdom that you have that could allow you to regulate, that could allow you to come back to love, even if that wasn't something that was necessarily taught within social learning, or, environmental factors. And yeah, that's interesting that we always have the ability to tap into some of these things that are hardwired deep beyond the social, or external forces at hand in our childhood.
Yeah. Yep. And I have a lot of people in my private practice now, gosh, 60, 70, 80 years old. Some of them are very successful corporate people, run businesses, et cetera, made all this money, but they feel a sense of emptiness, a gnawing, something's missing. Or I work with a number of women like, gosh, I realize in their 70s, 80s, like, this is what I'm missing. I feel like I want more. And just to decide I want to go inward and I want to heal is a huge, huge decision. And here's the thing, I think we can all heal, all of
Mm,
us, and we can
mm,
keep learning to experience more the depth of life and love, and I think that's why we're on this earth. I do. It's to learn to love and keep loving more, and that's what we can share with others, and that's, I think, what we take with us when we die, our ability to love.
yeah. A big theme that seems to come up with your life and what you're talking about is curiosity, where I think a lot of people, they lose that. Can you speak a little bit about curiosity and maybe why people lose this sense of interest? What are some of the barriers? And, what's that dichotomy of healing, expansiveness, and curiosity?
Mhm. I think first to start with research that what is it, about 70, 80% of the United States population lives in their mind. They live in their mind, they live on autopilot. I love Dr. David Hawking's work about how our mind can just run us. So, to have a slight sense of awareness, we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings. I love the word awareness, tuning in. Where am I? Oh, I've just spent 3 hours in my mind thinking. And just
Mhm, mhm,
tuning in. Where am I? Building that awareness muscle I share with people to have, oh, there I am. And okay, can I shift gears and take some moments and be present and be curious. I like you. I love the word curiosity because when we're curious, we're in a calm parasympathetic state. We're kind of like, it opens the door. It opens the door to regulating, yes, our nervous system, to opening up the door to possibilities, to a wondering. It's just, I love the word curiosity to start there. Where am I? What's happening? Okay. Well, what are my choices? What could I do differently? Everything
Yeah.
I'm talking about, it's a consciousness, it's a choice to keep opening and growing and opening to the preciousness of life. It's here for every one of us.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely spot on. And I'm wondering too, if there's like a concept of fear in curiosity. Like if there's if the two if fear do you feel fear is a barrier to curiosity? Because I think sometimes when we're curious, there's an unknown component. And I'm wondering that dichotomy of fear as it relates to curiosity and how people may be overcoming that sense of uncertainty, perhaps.
Mhm. And when I think of fear, you almost get into the duality, dualism of love versus fear, or you're present, you're curious, but then, oh, you're human. So then your mind takes you 100 miles over here to fear. But again, if you can just, for all of us, we all have fear at some moment or anxious. I mean, that's human. But I think the quicker we can catch it and come back. Even one of my favorite books in the last few years is Joseph Nguyen, Don't Believe Everything You Think. And he calls it like your drive-by ego mind that wants to like pull you here, pull you there. All of a sudden you're fearful, like, choop, catch it, come back.
Mm,
And the quicker
yeah.
you can catch it and come back, then you're just not stuck in this whole fear loop because we can turn the stress response on by thought alone. What we feel, our thoughts, then the emotions, chemical response, and we can self regulate and direct that.
Love it. Very good stuff. Now your book, I know your book was published a couple years ago. Tell us a little bit about I know you mentioned earlier a lot of people were really kind of pushing you to get this out there, but when did you know like, all right, this is a thing, I'm gonna do this? And was it from like was it downloaded to you? Like how did it all that process all unfold? Because it takes a lot of courage to write a book and I almost think it's kind of like having a kid where it's like the idea is impregnated in your mind and you're birthing this child and then you let it out by releasing it and then you become a responsible parent by believing it and pushing it. But tell us a little bit about that birthing process for you and how that, the timelines of things and how that came to
Mhm.
be.
I did have a number of people over years like, "You should write a book, you should write a book." I was like, "Hmm." And then before I started writing my book, I saw a vision of it. I saw this book I was publishing. It was so interesting. About 10 years before I started writing, I started blog writing in 2017, 2018, just starting to find my voice. That was great. And then when the pandemic hit, in 2020, my husband has a rare heart condition. He's doing very well, but we had to be really careful given his health condition. So we were pretty isolated. My whole business luckily just went online. But at night, I just sat down at a computer and I started writing and I couldn't stop writing. So the book just flew through me. I did hire an editor
Mhm.
to critique and comment and like I like this, I don't like this, I want more here, but writing the book, honestly, was almost the easy part. It was just after you write a book, like, you don't even think, "Oh my gosh, marketing, all that entails." So,
Yeah.
but I've learned so much. So, yeah, I think writing a book is a calling because you have to have a lot of life energy to
Mhm.
sit and write and write and write, and anyway, I feel very called to have written my book, Everyday Awakening.
Mm. Tell us a little bit about the book because I'm wondering, I don't know, at least for me, like when I write a book, there's an energy or intentionality that I have behind the book. But is that, something with your book or, tell us a little bit more, about the book because it, really seems amazing, endorsed by Mel Robbins, but tell us a little bit about the book and what people could gain from it.
Mhm. My book is about 3 life-changing experiences and the 5 lessons, practices I learned through my lifetime. And the 3 life-changing experiences, yes, when I was a child, my near-death experience, and then my husband. dying, flatlining, coming back from this heart situation. And then the 5 practices are come back to the present moment, connect with something greater, grow your trust, embody love, and hold openness. So those are the 5 practices that really came through over many, many, many years. So starting with the first practice, come back to the present moment. It all starts when we can just take a break from our busy mind to be here, now, present. And that's where we can open into this energy, the sense of something more, and learning how to trust it, learning how to find love and be loving and love more and go with the flow. So I have 42 exercises in my book, from breathing to meditating to somatic work, that I share in my private practice, to help people just find more peace and be able to live from their heart and soul.
So this isn't just a self-help book, this is like a higher self book, right? It's really helps people to connect, and it's very much tool-based and practical. I've heard this from a lot of viewers where they feel a sense of disenfranchisement not having a near-death experience or spiritual transformative experience. Um, do you need to really have those things to experience awakening? Um, or could people do that through like practical steps and tools? Like, is that something that everyone can have? Is spirituality, something just for a select few, or do you think it's a participation sport where people have an ability, each person has ability to connect in their own way? And if so, how?
I think that we open into awakening several paths. I think coming through awakening, really opening up into the deeply into the moment, this oneness with God and the universe through crisis upheaval is not as common. I think that is one path.
Mhm,
I think another path is many people are searching. There's just like there's something more, there's a gnawing, there's an emptiness, so they're searching and there's an openness. And then I think a third path that I've experienced are people that are on the path, they have a meditation practice, they have a yoga
mhm.
practice, maybe they're tai chi, whatever, and that's how they keep opening. So I think there's many angles, there's not one select like you have to go through this. No, I think the operative word in the moment for me is to share. I think, can you be open? Open. Can you carve out, even if it's 5 minutes where you sit and just are present and using your senses? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? Just dropping you into the moment or following your breath, where you can just experience the moment and feel and listen. We are all being guided, every one of us. But
Mhm,
it's when we carve out time to be still and listen in, the answers arise.
mhm. Yeah. What about self-esteem? Because a lot of people feel like, "Hey, I'm not worthy of that, but someone else is worthy of a download," or some other person, "Yeah, they're a medium, they're great, but me, I'm a pauper. I'm not worthy of that." Tell us a little bit about self-esteem and its relationship to connectivity.
hmm I would say self-esteem, and I experienced this with a number of people I've worked with in my private practice. I think self-esteem issues, I'm not enough, who am I? Why am I even sharing my wisdom? Stems from childhood, early childhood. I would go start there and look at, where did I learn this? Where is the origin of this? Was there one experience? It
Mm,
could even just be one experience when you're little, of a parent shutting you down or being negative, or that caused that imprinting of that thought and that belief. So I would go to the origins of where that comes from, of where that thought comes from, and start there to unearth it, to feel it, to release it, to heal, to open into who you really are.
yeah, and it's something that everyone goes through. No matter how successful you have, there's always that voice that creeps up, and
Mhm.
really being able to parent that voice and hold that voice's hand and not abandon that voice, and just reminded that voice, you are enough, you are special, you are sacred, you
Mhm.
are eternal. And I think experiences like yours really speak to who we truly are. And I'm wondering, after all these years and all these books that you've read and all these experiences, is there do you feel you've come to a greater understanding, of yourself and the nature of reality? And, that's is that something that's finite, or that's something each and every day you're beginning to expand as well?
Oh, I think I had this woman named Anetta Knopp on my podcast recently, and I loved how she said, "We're awakening every day. It's an awakening journey every day." And am I fully, enlightened? No, because 'cause I'm here in a body. So, I believe in I still have gosh, I have so much to learn. It's like, that famous what theologian philosopher at the end of his life, he's realized, like, he knows nothing, It just I think
I think
life
it
isn't
was it well, I think Albert Einstein said that too, like,
Yeah.
the more I know, the less I understand kinda thing, and if he's saying that, then who
Mhm.
are we? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, gosh, I have so much more to learn, and
Yeah.
part of my passion of I read 2, 3 books a week in the self-help philosophy, theology, that and end of life, all that genre, and I'm like, "Is there something more to learn?" I think it's exciting, so I think we're just always learning and deepening. I feel like it's the word for me would say a deepening. I feel like deepening into the depth of who I am, and then and with it, just even the book launch and the marketing, it's about being vulnerable and sharing that. Wow, no one tells you social media and all the different interviews, but I think can you just share what's your truth to help people? My whole goal is like how can I help? How can I be of service? Why am I here? That's it.
No. I love that analogy of a deepening because I think a lot of people analogize life to be like an ocean, one drop, stuff like that, or part of an eternal ocean. But we're all, some people are living on the surface, and then some people go deeper. They find the coral reefs and all these beautiful elements about the ocean, and they're able to expand. The same thing with
Mhm.
spirituality. Like sometimes we're just kind of living this belief, and that's a little bit limited, and we go a little bit deeper. We're able to see and expand to more. So that's really really cool.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, Catherine, anything coming up with you in terms of events or projects or any types of ideas that you would like to share before we conclude? And we'd love to have you back whenever you can. But anything that you'd like to share with the audience? Any final messages or events coming up?
A big event, May 13th, if by chance you're in Minneapolis or coming to Minneapolis, it's at the O'Shaughnessy Theater here in the Twin Cities, doing a big talk with Kathy Wurzer, who's our big media personality here, and 2 doctors, an integrative doctor, psychiatrist, and medical doctor. We're talking about navigating uncertainty, mind, body, spirit experience, and how to live through that. So that's May 13th if you're by chance in the Twin Cities. And I'll share, yeah, I already have a vision. I'm already seeing my next book, but I won't go farther in the
I
genre of awakening. Yeah.
I can't wait to have you back on the podcast to share that too, as well. And you're a literal miracle. Having a 20% chance of living, and here you are today with these profound awakenings. You're making such an impact. So thank you, for all that you're doing, and for people who are interested in learning more about you, following your events or any of your services. Where's the best place to find you?
Yeah. My website, Catherine with a C, catherineduncan.org. I'm on all social media platforms as Catherine Duncan, MABCC. There's a lot out there. And I also have a podcast called Everyday Awakening.
Mhm.
Yeah. Of which, Jacob, you're coming on soon.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
thank you so much. It's such a delight to talk to you. I feel like my soul brother. I feel such a connection to you. So, thank you so much.
Thank you. And I feel the same exact way, Catherine. Can't wait to be in your podcast as well. But yes, do check out, Catherine's books, her website, give her a follow on social media. She does an awesome job of content creation and really giving over a lot of meaningful, beneficial, and wise words that are needed, especially during this time. So she's a terrific messenger and the real deal. So do give her a follow and check out her podcast as well. My final question is, what's one thing that Catherine does that really, buzzes you up? You're feeling a little bit of a low and you do that one thing and that gets you, to no low. Is there one thing that you try to habituate or do these days?
I'll tell you a morning habit I've done for many, many years. I don't get out of bed before I do this is
Mhm.
when I wake up in the morning, before I get out of bed, alarm clock, whatever, is I have a few minutes of gratitude, and I think about like, "Huh, I'm alive. Thank you," and grateful, and then I feel here's a big piece of the gratitude. It's easy to just think and write it down, but you gotta feel the energy. Gratitude, love, highest vibrational energies. I feel it in my body, and I have a few minutes of prayer before I start my day, and it sets the tone for my day, and just holding love and gratitude. And knowing we're not alone, that gives me a lot of comfort.
I love it. Yeah, I found that, there's that Zig Ziglar quote that says, like, "Gratitude, not aptitude, will define your altitude." And,
Mhm.
so I think the more grateful we are, the higher we go, and it's just funny, I don't look this good for no reason, I have ring lights all around me, but when you were talking, the ring light started to really flicker when you're talking about gratitude, because that's a real practice of getting into the light, so, yeah, that was really cool. I was able to see that, so
Yeah.
Spirit is really affirming what you were just saying. So that's
Oh,
really
lovely. Well, bless you. It's such a blessing to be on your show. I thank you so much.
Catherine Duncan, thank you so much for being a guest. You're welcome anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for tuning in to this wonderful conversation that I had with Catherine. I loved hearing about her personal experiences and all of her insights and wisdom to integrate in today's world. And she is such a light here on the planet and making such a difference to so many souls. And thank you for tuning in. Make sure you check out Catherine's information, her book, and give her a follow on social media. And thank you for tuning into our channel. We hope you can join us for future podcasts to come and conversations to come as well. Thank you for tuning in. Let's be in touch.